Hello, and welcome once again to the Farming Country Podcast. In today's episode, I head up the Dale to Threshfield for a farm walk and talk with well-known local dairy and sheep farmer Angus Dean, and we discuss changes they've made over recent years and how farming fits with family life. CCM's media man Robin Moule canters up the Dale for a chat with fellow racehorse enthusiast Les Fell, owner of Silver Streak, who's due to run in the champion hurdle at Cheltenham this coming Tuesday. And I speak to Chris Bailey from Craven Farm Vets about pulling, supping and jabbing. We're talking about the lambing shed. Jeremy and Ted talk trade and trends once again, and Meg Schofield talks through the upcoming stewardship scheme, giving a valuable insight into how you could benefit. Let's get stuck in. We're up here at Threshfield with Angus Dean from A.L. Dean & Son of Toft House. And most important question first, Angus. Do you prefer iodine or terramycin spray on the navels?
Iodine for me.
Second question, is it bows or granny knots?
Definitely a bow man for me.
So we're sat here, Angus is just setting his lambing pens up. He likes to be ahead of the curve. What have you got ahead of yourself in the next 2 months, Angus?
Over 1,000 sheep to lamb, 750 mules, 250 swales, due on the 10th of March, so we're just getting all the shed ready for lambing. We've had a good scan this time, so a lot of lambs again. Luckily not just as many triplets as last year. We'll be starting this week heptavacking them all. We'll move them in maybe in about a fortnight's time, maybe 10 days a fortnight into the shed. Then they'll go on to the TMR system that we run here.
You've set ahead of the scheme, so you run a dairy herd here as well, which a lot of people will know, and you have the benefit of having the TMR. What benefits do you see out of the TMR, out of your feeder wagon, through lambing and through your sheep?
I was very reluctant to change from a cake and silo based diet for the sheep. It worked. We did have a lot of problems with prolapse, but since we've gone on to the TMR, it stopped all prolapses. We used to have about 20 sheep with harnesses on, and we'd have sheep pushing all the lamb bed out and everything and losing the lot. Moving on to the TMR system, it's stopped all. I won't say it's stopped completely, but it's certainly reduced by about 90%.
And trade secrets, what's in your TMR? Are you willing to give up your recipe like Mary Berry?
Yeah, we have a nutritionist that comes in, so what's in the TMR is silo, caustic treated wheat, straw and soya.
Do you find getting away from the cake that you have a much more even intake of feed through the sheep rather than fighting through the trough?
Yeah, you do. You've like feeding time, you've no crushing in the pens when you're feeding cake, because that mix is there and it is there 24 hours a day. So yeah, you have the time when you feed them that they all try and get, but they don't push like they do when you're feeding cake.
Have you found plenty of staff willing?
I won't say we struggle with staff, but there is going to be that time when we do need some good staff, and more so now with a young family. It does put more strain onto it, as in I like to be there to put them to bed and give them the tea on a night. Leading
into worming, drenching, what's your routine? Vaccinations going into the shed and out of the shed?
This time I've not fluke or wormed the sheep. When they went to the tup with the advice from the vet, we'd taken some blood samples and there was no fluke in the flock. But before they do come into the shed, they will be heptavaced this week sometime, and I will fluke them just before they come in, and that will be it. We're not feeding the same TMR ration as the cows, but we're feeding the same feed as the cows, and so we're buying it in bulk as well, so there is definite saving, but in the reduced loss of sheep with prolapses, we'd maybe lose about 15 to 20 sheep a year pushing the whole prolapse out and everything, where that's a loss of 3 lambs and a sheep as well, so the saving there is massive.
Energy has been a big thing. You've had a change there. What have you been up to this year?
Yeah, I saw an advert from the NFU that they were looking into energy supplies, and my energy was coming up for renewal in October, so I rung the NFU and I asked them to look into it, and we've made a saving of £1,200 this year from moving energy companies. I was literally on the phone for about half an hour, 3/4 of an hour, and everything was sorted.
Sounds good. What's your plans going forward? You've had a good sheep season.
The sheep season's been very, very good this time, very buoyant. With Brexit coming, people sold the lambs early and probably got them off the farm before Brexit came in January. Who knows what the next 12 months brings? We shall just have to see.
Thanks again to Angus for showing me around Toft Gate. It's always nice to catch up with local farmers. If you want any more information on NFU Energy, please give the local Skipton NFU office a call. Now, something a little different. With the flagship champion hurdle at Cheltenham just a few days away, Robin Moule learns from Les Fell why he thinks his horse should go very close in the big one.
I'm with beef cattle farmer Les Fell at his Brighholme farm in Giggleswick on the banks of the River Ribble. Now Les owns an 8-year-old thoroughbred racehorse called Silver Streak, and the Galloping Grey has his date with Destiny this coming Tuesday, March 16th, when running for the third time in the champion hurdle at the Cheltenham Festival, the biggest and most valuable race of its kind in the British National Hunt calendar. So Les, before we talk about the champion hurdle, tell us how you came to own a horse like Silver Streak.
We bought him at Doncaster in 2016. The first time we went, I went with Evan and we didn't buy anything. The next time we went, we bought Silver Streak.
And Evan, of course, trains down in the Vale of Glamorgan in Wales, and he's a good friend. Good friend now.
Yeah, we've known Evan thick end of 10 years now.
Silver Streak, it's fair to say, has had a sparkling career to date and has won some very notable and valuable races. Just tell us about those, if you will.
The first race he won for us, Paul Maloney rode him at Taunton, and he won very easily. Most impressed, I thought. Thrilled is the word. He went from Taunton to Musselburgh. He won there. His next move was the following year. He went to Chepstow. A young apprentice jockey rode him. He was one of Evan's young riders. He won, and he won good. The next time was the big one. It was a Swinton hurdle at Haydock, and we actually asked Tom O'Brien to ride him. Anyway, 2 races before, Tom O'Brien came off, and he was taken, he couldn't ride for the rest of the day, so we put Adam Wedge on him, who was another young rider at the time for Evan. The rest of it was history after that. He won Swinton hurdle at Haydock that day.
Grade 2 that, or a Grade 1?
Grade 2. He didn't win his Grade 1 till December. He's running a lot of Grade 1s. We decided we would go to the champion hurdle, Welsh champion hurdle at Fosslas, which he won by about 5 or 6 lengths. And you couldn't believe it, you couldn't make it up really. Well, it's something special. He ran in the champion hurdle. He was 80-1, ran third. Needless to say, I hadn't backed him, but that's my fault, nobody else's. The story after that was he's been running in Grade 1s. He went to Newcastle for the Fighting Fifth. Last year he thrived and done his best, made a big horse. Kempton at the end of 19 and won. He went to Kempton again and got beat by Epitanti, which was the horse that won last year's champion hurdle. This year went to Kempton, had a good run, didn't win but alright, second. We finished up this spring at Newcastle. So the next thing we went to Cheltenham in the International, and he got beaten a nose by a horse called Song for Someone. I still maintain if he hadn't taken the hurdles out that day he would have won, but of course I'm biased. The next move was we would go to Kempton for the Christmas hurdle. Epitanti was there, it was 5-1 on, and we were 13-2. Needless to say, I didn't back him again. The rest of it was he won by 6 lengths, led from start to finish, and never looked like getting beat. After saying that, Epitanti in the paddock before the race was very unsettled. He was taking 2 people to handle her. Genuinely, I don't think Epitanti run up to its top game, and that leads us up to now, where we have some hot opposition.
Well, the obvious question is, have you had a little each way wager yourself?
No, I haven't. I'm not saying I won't back him, but I think he'll drift out again, because I think some of these mares, well, they're really fancying the chances, and I mean, you can't discount Goshen after the way it went. You just can't. No. It's totally impossible to discount that now. From when it ran at international to last time, it ran a massive improvement. Massive.
There we have it, straight from the horse's mouth, if I can say that.
Well, I wish the horse would tell me what was going to happen.
The only thing to be said now, lads, is good luck for next Tuesday, and may the winning streak continue.
Well, true. Thank you very much.
All the best to Silver Streak. Now, with lambing well and truly underway, it's high time to hear from the vets. Welcome, Chris, to the Farming Country podcast. Just a few questions. What do farmers want to be looking for in their lambing box to aid with lambing?
If you're going to go and lamb a ewe, I suppose the main thing you want is you're going to need some lube. Makes it easier to get in there and deal with any malpresentations, whatever you're dealing with. Makes it kinder on the ewe. I would always have some gloves, mainly for my own benefit, but also for the ewes. Hygiene's important. We don't want to get infections into these ewes, so I do like gloves. I personally love using a lambing loop for these heads backs. You can use lambing ropes as well on the feet and lambing ropes for the head. I really find the plasticky loops a lot better for getting the heads up. I find it really, really easy. I think for these difficult lambings, I think getting the head is really, getting a loop on the head, getting control of the head really does make a difference. So if that ewe's had a rough doing a difficult lambing, I would definitely be giving her some antibiotics. I would generally be erring on the side of something reasonably long acting, and I'd be using probably something penicillin based. I think the other thing that's really important is we want this ewe to get up, to eat, and to produce some good quality milk for its lambs. So a bit of pain relief and anti-inflammatory I think is really important. There's been a lot of work looking at survival rates of ewes which are twin lamb which are treated with anti-inflammatories, and it shows that the ones that get them do a lot better at getting up and eating. And I think the same goes for lambing, so I would be looking at some anti-inflammatories.
Just talk to me about sort of neonatal survival.
Again, once that lamb's born, I think it's really important. Well, the next most important thing is doing its navel with some iodine to try and dry it up. Again, if you're having a problem on your farm, people tend to do it twice. They tend to do it when it's first born and then going back round again 6 hours later. I think that is important. Making sure you're trying to keep the lambing environment as clean as possible and as well bedded as possible, I think it's really important. Probably the most important thing that's going to happen in that lamb's entire life is the next thing, which is its first feed, is that colostrum. And I think this is absolutely essential that these lambs get enough colostrum.
Obviously, watery mouth an issue. What's your number one tip?
So when we're looking at watery mouth, it's caused by a bacterial infection that gets into the lambs. It's coming from the environment, that's where it's coming to, and this bacteria is on every single farm. And the number one thing to control it is making sure these lambs get enough colostrum. If that lamb gets enough colostrum, it will not get watery mouth. And when I say enough colostrum, I think we've got to look at the main things. We talk about the 5 Qs, and the first one is quickly. That lamb's that's born, guts are porous. The longer that lamb's alive, the less able it is to absorb the goodness from the colostrum. So we talk about the first 6 hours, but personally I'll be talking about the first 2 to 3 hours. It wants to get that first feed in those first couple of hours. How much it gets is really important. And we talk about 50 mils a kilo in that first feed. Your 4 kilo lamb, you're looking at giving it 200 mils in that first feed. The next thing I'm going to say is quality. Those chronically lame ewes or suffering from other diseases aren't going to have good quality colostrum. Your mother's colostrum's best, and then I'd be looking at using another ewe's colostrum. Bearing in mind there is a risk that it might not be suitable on all flocks of some diseases that can be transmitted, but if I'm just breeding fattening lambs, I'd be more than happy to use another ewe's colostrum. If that's not available, you can actually use cow colostrum if that's available to yourselves. Again, making sure it's harvested quickly and cleanly is important. There is a risk of allergic reactions with cow colostrum, but it's something that I do advocate and I do like doing. And then the final thing is your artificial colostrums to use as a top up. My next Q, not actually a Q, it's squeaky clean, and making sure that colostrum, when you're harvesting it, I think this is really important. When you administer it and you're harvesting it, it's got to be done in a clean way. If you're seeing a lot of watery mouth on your farm, I'd be questioning what I'm doing about my colostrum. Am I getting it right? Am I going wrong somewhere? How quickly they're getting it, what quantity they're getting, and the quality. And then after that, I say watery mouth control, it comes down to trying to keep the environment as clean as possible, especially trying to keep these ewes that are lambing as clean as possible, the new lamb pens as clean as possible. We need as an industry to be moving away from antibiotics routinely used. There's no excuse for it. There's plenty of farms you go on and they don't know what Spectam is or any of these products. They don't use it and they don't have an issue. So it is possible. I'm not saying that you'll get from a farm that has a problem with it to not using any of it in the first year or even the second year. And there may be a place for topping up, for using it as the lambing period gets on, especially on these triplet lambs and as the build up in the pens gets on. But we want as an industry to be moving to a situation where they don't use it. And I repeat what I said, there are lots of farms who I know who wouldn't know what Spectam or any of these watery mouth products were because they've never used it. If you get the rest right, you don't need it. If you put a thermometer pro lamb's back end and it comes out at a temperature below 37 degrees, it's got hypothermia. And when we talk about treating hypothermia, there's two situations and two things. When a lamb warms up, when you start warming up, its metabolic rate will start to increase and it will start to need energy. If it's not got enough energy when you warm that lamb up, it will end up dying. So how do we know if these lambs have enough energy or not when we're warming them up? Well, as long as the lamb's born to a normal birth weight, with the actual born with a fat reserve, we call it the brown fat reserve. If that lamb is less than 6 hours old and you find it and it's cold, you can actually put it straight into a heat box, warm it up, and then once it's warmed up and holding its head up, you can then tube it with some colostrum and it'll be fine. If that lamb is over 6 hours old, the chances are it's burnt up all its brown fat reserves. So these lambs do need some energy before we warm them up. If the lamb can hold its head up and it can suck, tube it with colostrum and warm it up, it's fine. If it can't, you're probably looking at having to give it a glucose injection. I would really encourage people to do this. It's really easy to do. It's really easy to make the solution up, and it does save lambs' lives. And I would really encourage people to do it, but you give it this solution of glucose, normally about 50 mils, you inject it into it, and then you warm it up.
Thanks for that, Chris. Lots to take on board there. Sticking on site here at Skipton, let's catch up with Jeremy and Ted on the latest trade talk.
I was having a chat with Ted Ogden, farm stock manager at Craven Cattle Marts, and we just thought we'd have a discussion about the ewe and lamb trade. How's it set off, Ted?
Yeah, we've been selling for about maybe 4 to 5 Mondays now. Entries are getting into the region of 150, 200 outfits. The better younger outfits are 80, equivalent of 80 to £100 a life. That's both singles and twins. And more commercial, older outfits, maybe with younger lambs, anywhere from 60 to £75 a life.
Are you seeing usual trends with trade at the moment? Same customers coming to the ringside?
Yeah, usual customers, people who are looking for heavier sheep with stronger lambs on, quite willing to give the premiums that you would see early season, lambs that they'll be able to get away probably anytime May time or very early June. They're willing to give the premium for that. Not seeing many younger sheep yet to put into flocks though.
Do you think you'll see those younger sheep coming out later on in the spring and different customers come to the ringside?
Yeah, I'd expect to maybe see some shearlings with twins arriving anywhere early to mid-April onwards, and that's the point where you generally see flock masters who are looking for sheep to put into flocks, and a couple of weeks later the hogs with lambs at foot will arrive as well.
I know we've always had fairly good trade every year around here, perhaps the way farming is going in this locality, but is it your impression that this ewe and lamb trade is pretty general around the country?
Seems to be. North Wales, southwest England, anywhere where there's large flocks of sheep and plenty of grass, early season grass. Even the hedgerows are changing. There's a bit of grass as we've come a little bit milder this last fortnight, so people are certainly looking for stuff to grace that.
Thanks very much, Ted. As with many things in the sheep world, things are looking pretty promising at the moment.
Now, here's Meg Schofield of WBW with all the info you need to get started with a new countryside stewardship scheme.
I'm on site measuring a dry stone wall in preparation for a countryside stewardship application. If you're wondering what funding might be available to you, whether it's for improving farm efficiency and productivity, environmental benefits, or simply to fill the gap in income as BPS reduces, then countryside stewardship might be the answer. This year there has been a slight change in the layout of the scheme, but the fundamentals remain the same. Countryside stewardship is the current agri-environment scheme which has been running since 2015. The government have announced that 2023 is the last year that you can apply for the scheme before the new environmental land management scheme comes into play. It is worth noting that anyone who enters a countryside stewardship agreement from 2021 onwards will be able to end the scheme prematurely to go into the new Elms scheme without penalty. Because of this, WBW are encouraging farmers to make the most of the scheme now whilst it's available, to put you in good stead for a successful transition into Elms, which will replace BPS and stewardship altogether. Whether the payments will reflect this is yet to be seen. So moving on to the scheme itself, much like previous years, there is an option for a 5-year or a 2-year scheme. The 5-year scheme is known as mid-tier and allows you to choose from a list of land management options which generate an annual revenue payment. On top of this, you can apply for capital items to improve your field boundaries or yard. The capital items are split into 3 categories, which are boundaries, water quality and air quality. And subject to eligibility, you can apply for up to £120,000 worth for each of the water or air quality categories, and then £50,000 worth for the boundary category. The 2-year capital grant allows you to just apply for options under the 3 categories mentioned. However, you are limited to a £20,000 spend for each category. Throughout the scheme, the most popular items have been concrete yard renewal and roofing over. However, your yard must be under the water quality high priority area and also requires consent from the catchment sensitive farming officer. Likewise, you might have heard that the new options for slurry scrapers and slatted floors in cattle buildings are available this year. These options also require CSFO consent. You must have contacted the local catchment sensitive farming officer by the 19th of March to register your interest in these options. The deadline for applying for capital grants is the 30th of April, whilst the deadline for the mid-tier is the 30th of July. If you would like further information or assistance with applying for these schemes, please contact WBW on 01756 692 900, and please be aware that we will have to know in good time so that we can download you an application pack and request the relevant consents. There is a large variety of options available under this scheme, so even if you think that the scheme won't be suitable to your land, I can guarantee there will be something available for you.
Well, that's all for today. Thanks for tuning in. We'd welcome any of your thoughts, and please send them through to us. Episode 4 will be available from Friday the 2nd of April, and you know the story. Stay safe, stay farming, and keep filling the trough.